Nortec. We've had a great working relationship with them over the years as they continue to grow, increasing their product lines. And so it's been a great relationship, and we appreciate them joining us today and to give us an idea of where they're going and what's happening that's on the horizon with Nortec. Obviously, their 2 gig panel has been a major hit with the industry, and as well as with Dynamark. We use a lot of their panels through our dealers, and it's been nothing but, again, a terrific relationship. So with that, David, I'll turn it over to you, and you can do your intro into Zach. David is our national accounts representative. He's been just assigned to Dynamark recently, but again, he's been with Nortec, I believe, for quite some time. Is that correct, Dave?
It's about 4 years now, Mike.
Okay, excellent. So, David, with that, I'll turn it over to you. We'll get the day started.
Great. Hey, Mike, thanks so much for the introduction. And to everybody out there, thank you so much for letting us join today and giving us the invitation and opportunity to talk a little bit about Nortec. So as mentioned, my name is David Gable. I'm Director of Key Accounts for Nortec. We're very happy to work with the Dynamark team and being part of this partnership. I'm based out of Jacksonville, Florida. So joining me on the call is Zach Anderson. Zach will be driving most of the discussion. We're kind of talking about changing the game again. You know, as you know, we came out with the 2 gig GC2, I believe it was 2010, and much success, changed the industry around as far as having a complete security platform through an ecosystem, and we're doing it again as we're making some changes to the 2 gig product line that Zach is going to talk about. So Zach, if you'll just move on to the next slide, please.
Sure thing.
So a little bit quick about Nortec before I turn it over to Zach. So as you look at the center column, the 2 gig and Go control is where we're going to spend most of our time today. Talking about, again, the ecosystem of security, and then automation and Z-Wave devices. Zach will spend a lot of time on the smart home and connected home technology. But some of our other brands that are under the Nortec umbrella that a lot of people aren't aware about is our smart home control and entertainment, the Elan, Geffen, Niles, Speakercraft, Furman, Proficient products. We also have a big market push into the health and wellness through our Numera product. We're actually testing some of that product right now with the Dynamark. Interesting company called Intellivision that we acquired. It's all about video analytics, facial recognition, and artificial intelligence that we're introducing into our product line on some of our commercial applications. And then also you'll be seeing that in the future on our residential applications, especially the facial recognition, and also our access control platform and a commercial and residential for our linear access control products, and also our Mighty Mule division, which is large gate controllers for a small commercial, industrial, and large residential home applications. But our focus today is going to be on security and automation with 2 gig and Go control. Just a little background, we have about over 4 million systems deployed through our 2 gig network, and over 20 million connected devices in the marketplace. We have a long history of being a market and industry and global leader in that space. We were in the IoT business before IoT terminology even became popular and part of our everyday lexicon. And with that, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the new changes that we're making to the game, our platform on the GC2 and GC3, the enhancements we're making that are available. And Zach, I'm just going to turn it over to you at this time.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for that. A little intro of myself. I also have been in the industry for several years. I've been with the company now about just shy of 7 years. Started out doing installs back in the day for another company. Then went to tech support. Started doing QA work for Nortec on the 2 gig side, and then I've gone now on to training. So I've been with Nortec for a while and played with this product for several years now as a result of it. And so we're going to go through a lot of this today. We'll talk about what's changed a little bit, where we came from a little bit more, to go along with what David spoke about, and also talk about some of the improvements we've made with our product as well as we've grown throughout the years. So we all started out several years ago back with our GC2 platform. And if my PowerPoint presentation clicker will work, I can highlight things, but I guess not. Sorry about that. So I'll just use my mouse for this then. So we started out with our 2 gig panel, started out using the 345 frequency because the guys that founded 2 gig started out with Honeywell at the time. And so one of the nice things about our product is that it's able to actually be compatible with the Honeywell products. So, and when we say that, we always like to talk about that it's compatible with the 5800 series Honeywell products. So what's nice about that for dealers in the field, for a lot of you guys, is the ability to have takeover options or to save your customers money when there's already existing sensors. A lot of the homes that are out there that have had security systems have Honeywell's products in there. So that's one of the nice things, you're able to use that 345 frequency and therefore have those available options. The other things we also are compatible with are going to be our Z-Wave devices that operate on the 908 band. We also do have our 900 megahertz frequency for our GC2 series panels. That's going to work with some of our accessories that we'll talk about here in a minute. But to go back, Z-Wave is our home automation platform. So that allows us to do a lot of our lights, locks, thermostats, a lot of things that you see in the homes now that are being automated and that you can purchase in the market currently. One of the neat things with our product as well, a lot of the industry communicated over POTS lines when cellular became an option. And so we communicate primarily over a cellular communicator to a remote service provider. And one of the primary providers is going to be alarm.com. We do have available options as well with SecureNet. But those are the 2 providers that we work with our back end. The nice thing about that is it brings your homeowners as well as you, the dealer, into the ecosystem. And also we have options available for broadband. For GC2 and GC2E, which we'll talk about both, that does require the broadband bridge. But for GC3 and GC3E, which we'll explain the difference between those 2 here momentarily, that's built in. So you have the availability of cellular and your broadband communicator options. Now those work in conjunction together to give you a good steady communication path to your remote service provider and your monitoring station. Like I said, one of the upsells of that remote service provider is to allow you and your customers as well as the monitoring station to all be involved. For a dealer, it saves you guys time and money a lot of times because you're able to do remote programming of a sensor. Someone's sensor, let's say someone replaced a door. We've had this happen where they replace a door and they lose their recessed door contact that we'll talk about here momentarily. Send them a new one and mail it out to them and program it remotely. Let's say they have a Z-Wave switch that they bought online. They're like, hey, how do I add this in? You're able to do that also through alarm.com remotely, which saves you guys time and money because it saves you a truck roll, which we all know. And you guys ever do truck rolls? That's kind of one of those industry requirements that doesn't really generate a lot of that RMR. It doesn't really generate great revenue for you guys because a lot of times you're losing time and money either way. No matter, even if it's a 5-minute drive, it still has downtime for your technicians. So that's one of the nice things about the remote service providers that provides. And it keeps the homeowner connected. Everybody now these days has a smartphone. I haven't met anyone who doesn't, except my grandma, but she's 97, so she gets a pass. But the nice thing is everyone's got a smartphone. So you're able to see everything, your real-time alerts, arm and disarm, see what's going on. You can see when your teenage daughter's sneaking out her bedroom window because you'll get an alert on your phone. You forgot your key fob to open up your garage door or your clicker. You can open and close your garage door with your phone now. You don't need to carry all these different devices. So that's the nice thing is about that remote service provider. It brings everybody in. Other things that I've mentioned a couple times that you may have caught on, calling our GC2 and GC3 the GC2E and the GC3E. So what we did is we added an encryption to our communication path. We've added it to our panels as well as our sensors. And the process is still going on to convert all of our sensors to E-Series to have that encryption. But the nice thing about that encryption is it's one way. It helps prevent takeovers. It helps prevent anybody from spoofing serial numbers and doing any of the hacking that's been talked about from some of the black hat conferences. So we have those available options now, which helps cut down. Now, there is one thing that you do need to be aware of with the GC2E is when you do have that level of encryption in there, you do lose the 900 megahertz frequency for your auxiliary devices, but it's only on the GC2E. So it's basically a trade-off. You either choose the encryption or the 900. But we'll talk a little bit about that later on. So I keep mentioning these part numbers over and over and over again, about a dozen more times, and I do apologize because when you do these trainings, we do tend to mix them up sometimes when we're talking. So that's why we like to have the photos, because it helps people understand what we're talking about. So here we have our legacy products on the left. Over there we got our GC2 and GC3. Those are being phased out for the E-Series panels. Now, the reason of that being is that the E-Series panels are backwards compatible. You can use legacy sensors and legacy hardware with the GC2E and GC3E panels. So that's why there's no need to keep those in production. They are being phased out. And you can see the visual differences between the two. The GC2 and GC2E, we changed the way the faceplate looks. We have a bigger touch screen on the E. We also on the 3E have the mesh grill guard or grill on the top right there to allow better sound quality. We've changed the cap touch buttons, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the other changes here. But one of the other nice things that we like about the encryption is the way it's allowed to be a next-gen ecosystem. It's allowed to improve that performance as well. It's also, like we said, preventing takeovers, which is a big part of our industry anymore, as people now no longer are trying to sell first-time alarm systems to people. We're selling takeover basically at this point is what ends up happening. It's kind of like how the cell phone industry was back in the early 2000s. Everyone was still trying to grab people to get them to sign up, but now we've moved past that. Now everyone has a cell phone, everyone's trying to get you to come over to their network. Same thing is starting to happen in the alarm industry. It's no longer about trying to get someone to buy an alarm system, it's about getting them to convert over or a reason why. And so that E-Series really helps out be an option as a bullet point to say, hey, ours is able to prevent takeovers and hacking. It makes it your system and yours alone, which is nice. We do have several of our sensors that are E-Series. So those provide that one-way encryption. They can't talk to any other panel except an E-Series panel, which is kind of nice. So if somebody brought in like a resolution products translator, they wouldn't be able to use that to take over those 2 gig sensors, which is kind of nice. And again, like we talked about, it prevents that hacking. One of the other nice things, I used to be an installer. I drive an extremely small Toyota Corolla, which is insane considering I'm 6'2" and I don't fit very well. But when I did installs, that's what I used to carry all my gear. And one of the nice things we've done with both our GC2E and GC3E is we have smaller packaging. Back in the day, that would have been a lifesaver. I could only carry about 5 to 7 panels with me at a time. And sometimes I'd use more than that in a day during installs. And so the downside was I was stuck to only doing 5 to 7 installs a day. If I had had this smaller packaging, I could have probably fit 10 or more and still had room for all my tools and gear. So we do offer secondary keypads as well. We do have 2 options for the GC3 that we like to talk about as far as secondary keypads and the GC3E. We have our SP1 and our SP2. We like to point out the SP2 just because you do still see them out there at your local distributors. But be aware that the GC or the SP2 is not an ideal option unless it's a last resort. And I'm just saying that to prevent you guys from a lot of trouble. Temporary fix until we were able to finally finish our SP1, even though the numbers don't make that we made SP2 before we made SP1. But the SP1 basically mimics and will do everything that your GC3 will do. You can even do your programming from there, which is nice. So it's a full 7-inch touchscreen. It's able to connect over Wi-Fi or hardwired via Ethernet to the GC3 or GC3E. The other nice thing about it is you're able to also have all your voice enunciations, your chimes, alarms, alerts, your weather data. The only other thing it doesn't do is 2-way voice calls. So we do just like to point that out for you. We do have a couple different radios. Both our radios are either going to use Verizon or AT&T. They are going to be using that 4G LTE. One of the nice things I love, so the GC2E is great because it's a simple panel. It's easy to use. It's a hard-working panel. It's been out for years. And the GC2E is no different than the original GC2 except for a few improvements. And so what's nice is it's tried and true. It's been out there since 2009. And so we've had those out there. It's the same board, just a bigger touchscreen. So we do have the cell units for that. But the nice thing I love about the GC3 series is the cell units are easy to install. So before, again, truck rolls. We talked about that before. If you had to go swap out a cell unit, as a good example, all the people who have 3G cell units in their panels, that program is being sunsetted. I think the goal is to have it sunsetted by 2021, if I remember correctly, as far as the Verizon, AT&T networks are concerned. And so the downside is people are going to have to go swap cell units. But for all those who have GC3s and GC3Es, we have our awesome cell phone sled. Again, another thing that saves you a truck roll. You can mail these out to your customer, and they're able to actually go ahead and just follow a process that's in their toolbox to walk them through how to swap out that cell unit. It's basically no different than doing a game cartridge on a Nintendo system from back in the day. If anybody here played those, you'd be familiar with the concept of a cartridge like these. So they're super easy to do. And again, it saves you a truck roll. You can mail this out to your customer. So one of the nice things that I love about it. Now, we do offer a couple other accessories. We have a desk kit. If people want to actually put these on desk, not mount them to the wall. We also have the replacement power supplies, the AC2 plugs. I tend to tell people that these are ideal for technicians or display units, not necessarily for an install, because it's a limited wire length and it's not one that can be spliced into. But these are great for a tool for technicians. I had one in my tiny little Corolla all the time that really made it easy for me to do programming and move the panel around the house and do my work without having to sit there and do 2 screws and wires because I wasn't leaving it on the wall at the time. But once I was done, then I could swap it out to the standard AC ones that come with the panels. Now there is 2 ways to update the GC2 panels. We just want to touch on this. One is the older way that we've had in the past was an update cable on the laptop. But now we made an easy updater. So if you're going to do GC2s and GC2Es, you need to have this easy updater. It'll save you time and money once again. You just plug it in the back of the panel, power up the panel, and hit the go button. And then, of course, we have desk kits for our secondary keypads for the GC2s. And that's going to be the TS1. That's what this is. So it's just a smaller touchscreen, does everything the same as the GC2 and GC2E. The only thing it doesn't do is you can't do programming like you can on the SP1. So I just like to point that out. So let's talk about the features. We keep blasting you with these panels. Let's tell you what they can actually do for you. So like we said, we have our GC2 and GC2E. You'll notice visual differences in them. This slide isn't totally accurate in showing the screen size difference. If you ever get a chance to see them side by side, it's quite obvious how much bigger that 5-inch touchscreen is on the GC2E. Our panel started out with the GC2. We're able to do with that currently on the current firmware up to 60 wireless zones. And that can be a mix and match. It doesn't have to be all 2 gig zones. Do some 2 gigs, some of the 5800 series Honeywell. With the new Aerologic switchover, you can use a 319 transceiver or also a Resolution Products translator and mix those in as well. So you can have a whole mix of different sensors on those 60 wireless zones. You have an option of up to 2 hardwired zones on the back of this panel. It can be normally open, normally closed, or an end-of-line resistor. We also have up to 8 key fobs. Key fobs are great. I don't use them personally. I think they're always great for like babysitters or dog sitters. Someone you want to give temporary access to your system, but I feel like they're a major security risk anymore. So I always like to say, use a key fob for things like that and don't carry around your car keys, just as a safety precaution. But they're great to have if you want to have someone watch your house or do something and give quick access for a while. We have 4 secondary keypads that you can do on GC2. We've got 64 user codes. If you have 64 friends that you actually want to give access to your home, you can do so. I don't have that many. I think I'm up to 6 total, and 3 of those are myself, my wife, and my son. So don't need 64 people coming into my home. But if it was a small business, that's actually a really great use. You can actually program schedules for those user codes as well, which is nice. We have our 2-way voice over cellular and also a 2-way voice option over POTS, only on the legacy GC2s. 2-way voice, just so everyone's aware, some people aren't in our industry, occasionally I run into that, is the ability for a phone call to take place through the panel. So the customer is able to talk to the monitoring station through the panel. And it's quite an impressive system. We've done extensive testing on it. Works amazing. We also have our Z-Wave is built in, so that home automation, no need for additional hardware or modules to swap out. Comes straight out of the box ready to go with Z-Wave. You can do up to 232 Z-Wave devices. One of the awesome things about that is our quality department, when I was in it, has actually tested this out just to verify that Z-Wave was telling the truth, make sure everything worked the way we say it does. We actually found 232 devices after gutting everybody's desk for any Z-Wave device, 40 power strips, and we were able to actually trigger all the Z-Wave devices and learn it in 232. It took about a week for us to get it all set up and running, but it was impressive. We have firmware updates we talked about. We got the Easy Updater, USB cable. There's also over the air. So if you have a remote service provider like alarm.com, you're able to do those over the air updates. So that's kind of nice. So now we have our GC2E. One of the things we talked about is a larger screen. One of the real good perks of that larger screen, though, is that it's capacitive touch. So it's what you're used to on like your cell phone or things like that. And the reason that's a big deal to us is before we had resistive touch on our GC2s. And so sometimes the screen would get out of calibration or things like that. And there's a recalibrate touch screen option in the toolbox there, but this just made it easier. It made the more logical sense to go this direction. One of the things is we've got that E-series, that one-way encryption and the E-sensor support. Now on GC2E, I point this out to make it stand out a little bit, we do have Z-Wave Plus with S2. So what that does for you, or what that means, is S2 is going to be Z-Wave's encryption, basically. Z-Wave's always had a level of encryption, but this is their way to step it up. There's only a few S2 devices out there, but just be aware that only GC2E has that S2. And then Z-Wave Plus, we'll talk about some of the benefits of that as well. And then we mentioned already the smaller packaging. So this is just showing you the common features between the two. You still get the Z-Wave, everything's still the same, 60 zones, 64 user codes, two-way voice, things of that nature. But the differences are things that we always like to point out is that the GC2E only has one hardwired zone. Just because it's not a commonly used device, it helped us reduce that cost a little bit on manufacturing. And then we also have the open controller outputs on the back. We actually removed that as well because, again, another thing that wasn't used. You don't get the POTS with GC2E. You do have the S2 encryption though with Z-Wave. And then encrypted sensors work with GC2E, but GC2 will not support encrypted sensors. But you can use legacy sensors with GC2E. And then there's different firmwares just because the GC2E has that encryption. But going forward, it'll be the same firmware file after we come out with our first firmware rep after the current one out there. The nice thing is for anyone who's programmed these, same flow, no change at all. There's a few additional features you may see, but other than that, it's the same flow on the programming. So it makes it a lot easier to transition to those panels. Things you'll see on the home screen, you got your status alerts up there. You've got your security for doing your arming, your menu, and also seeing your status screens. You also have your Z-Wave, which is located under the services button. Up top, we have just a power indicator and then access to the ready to arm screen. And then this just turns off your display. Now, one of the cool things I always tell people that I love is we have an awesome logo. And our logo has a lot of meaning to us as a company because it signifies where we came from. The logo, if any of you guys didn't know, stands for two guys in a garage. And if you actually look at the logo, it actually is a garage. That's actually what it stands for. That's actually the white part's the roll-up garage door. And then the blue area is actually just the three walls of the garage. And so that's one of the nice things is that's our staple. That's where we came from. Reminds us where we came from. The nice thing also is on our panel, the logo is always your quick access to the installer toolbox. The other nice feature about that, anytime you see a logo, the 2 gig logo on our panel, if you touch it, it'll pull up a numbered keypad. Generally, that's to go into programming. But the nice thing I always like to point out is that also is a quick access for your homeowners to use as a duress code. They can type in their duress code even if the system's not armed. And that's a quick access feature to do that as well. So that's one thing I always like to point out for everybody. So let's go and jump into the GC3 now a little bit and talk about the differences between those two. So far, does anybody have any questions or comments or concerns right now? Silence is a no. And hopefully I still have you all on the line. Just because
everybody's probably muted, so they probably can't answer a question right now. But we'll save it for the end, sure. Give them some time there.
Just want to make sure if anyone had something that they wanted me to touch base back on. So, all right. So now we'll jump into GC3 and going through what we've changed, how we've developed that as well. So the nice thing about GC3, it took us several years to get out, a little longer than we'd like, but the nice thing is we were able to take the time to actually build in a lot of the things that all of you, the dealers and distributors, were telling us we needed in our panel, where we needed to go. One of the biggest things was a bigger touchscreen. Why not? Cell phones were getting bigger, so why not our panel's touchscreen? So we made the 7-inch touchscreen with that. One of the other nice things that I love about GC2E, GC3, and GC3E, so the only panel that doesn't support what I'm about to tell you about is the legacy GC2. Plates all pop off on all of these. Super easy to take off and put back on. And what that does for you as a dealer is it allows you guys to actually brand your panels. I met a dealer actually just the other day down in Nashville who actually has a friend who has a laser engraving machine who laser engraves all of his faceplates for him. And it looks awesome. I was in love with it. So that's one of the nice things, that these all pop off. Some of the features of GC3, some of the other things that we did, 100 wireless zones. We figure we're building this thing from the ground up. Let's add some more zones. Let's add some more features. To 100 wireless zones that you can do. Again, that can be mix and match. Doesn't have to be all 2 gig. You can do up to 2 hardwired zones. We had gotten rid of it on GC2E, but GC3E, we were rebuilding it from the ground up once again. So we're like, why not? So we put on 2 hardwired zones, can do normally open, normally close, or end-of-line resistor. We now have 2 open collector outputs. Allows you to use those as a relay to trigger certain devices when the panel is armed, disarmed, or in different states. 8 key fobs before weren't enough. Well, we now got 32 key fobs. So that's a lot of key fobs. If you want to have access to your system and give those out to friends and family, we have that option. We now also offer up to 8 secondary keypads. Point out that it's generally 4 secondary keypads unless you're doing what's called smart areas. So now one of the other features is we offer partitioning. Partitioning allows you to now section off parts of the home, do condos or townhomes or different things like that, or where you have a basement, as it's called, where you have a separate room you're renting out. You now put a security system or a pool house, things of that nature, but only have one system that you're actually being charged from alarm.com for, while you're charging your customer possibly for 2 locations. I have one dealer who said they were going to do that in an apartment complex. So 1 panel for every 4 units, because there's 4 partitions, only being charged by alarm.com for 1 account for every 4 units, but he's charging each of his customers, each unit, a monthly monitoring service. So there's a nice little chunk of RMR that just went up for him, which is nice. And he's got it all laid out, how to translate that to the monitoring station, because it does tell you which smart area is triggering. And that's the term for our partitioning. It's called smart areas, just so you're aware. If 64 user codes were enough, well, we went up to 100 user codes. We figured 100 zones, why not 100 user codes? So our 2-way voice over cell, our Z-Wave Plus, and 232 Z-Wave devices. But the other huge upsell to these that I love, to the GC3 series, is updates. Again, we talked about truck rolls. Want to save yourself money when firmware updates come out? Instead of driving out there or doing OTA updates and getting charged for those, you can now actually just mail your customer a USB stick with the firmware on it. They just stick it into the top of the panel and it updates the panel. And then, like we talked about, the 8 secondary keypads and smart areas, those are 2 new features. So that came with partitioning. So a couple things on the E series. We talked about the new faceplate for that grill, the E series support encryption, the smaller packages, which means you can store more, you can put more on the trucks, which means no longer having to run back to a distributor because you don't have enough panels on your truck to take care of one issue or another. One of our other really big, awesome features that my wife loves that came out recently is our ability to do photo mode. So our photos, called My Photos, turning your panel to a digital picture frame. You can upload up to 50 photos. The customer can choose how they transition, how long each slide stays up there, things of that nature. They just put it on a thumb drive in a folder, put it in the top of the panel, load it onto the panel, and then remove the thumb drive. So it's real nice. Turns it into now, instead of just a white box with a black screen, an actual photo display. And then also for display units in trade shows, things of that nature, we do have a demo mode as well, where you can upload a demo video. You can play audio and video, a short video clip. So now if you want to have a couple displays, I had one dealer who actually used it for doing a demo mode. He'd have the customer do his walkthrough video on there, show him how to arm, disarm, and some basic usage, and then he'd go turn demo mode off. where he showed them how to get to it to turn it back on in case they needed to watch that video again. It's kind of a nice feature, just something kind of unique and different. This is just showing you a side-by-side comparison of all the panels and the differences between the three that you'll see out there. Basically, like we talked about, GC2E and GC3E is where everything is going towards. So keep that in mind, and then just pay attention to what you're looking for. If you need more zones, less zones, Z-Wave Plus or S2, depending on which Z-Wave devices you're using. Just all the things to kind of pay attention to based upon your needs. Now we do have also the programming on both the GC3 and GC3E are the same. Nothing's changed there. The E is actually more, the GC3 series is more intuitive with the programming, especially if you're familiar with our GC2s. So let's talk about what you see on the home screen though, and some of the customer settings as well. There's our beautiful logo in the upper right corner, and that's the same access. It'll give you a keypad. You can type in dress code or your installer code. Now the default installer code, I forgot to mention this earlier, for 2 gig is going to be 1561. That's our default installer code. And the kind of the neat thing is the story behind that, just curious where it came from. Sometimes I get that question, so I always like to tell people, is it's not as cool as the Two Guys in Garage story, but basically one of the founders of 2 gig, it was his dad's lucky number, 156. The 4th number, so we just added a 1. So that's how 1561 came about. One of the nice things though is the home screen on GC3 and GC3E be simpler. We were wanting to bring everything there to the front page as much as possible. On GC2 and GC2E, it's 3 button pushes at least to ARM. It's 2 to 3 button pushes to turn on a Z-Wave light. But now it's 1 to 2, depending on what you're trying to do. It's all on the home screen. You now view your alerts, your troubles, and any status changes up there. We have a bookmark feature. Grandma forgets how to get to the lights page, you can bookmark that page. So from the home page, she just has to remember to hit that button. It'll take her to that page so that she can turn on the lights. Dim screen, this will just turn the screen on and off, basically. It'll toggle it, or if you have the photos mode, it'll initiate the display if you don't want to wait for the timeout. We have a mute button now that silences the button pushes, which is super nice because a lot of people have asked about that. And one of the things we improved on and the UI here is there's sound options to adjust all the different features instead of just an overall sound slider. Our power indicator as well. We got our installer's toolbox that we talked about. The nice thing here on the main display is you have your arm staying away, your entry delay, and silent exit options. So now it's 1 button push to choose what kind of mode you're wanting to arm it in, as well as you get a 5-day forecast. On GC2, you only got 2 to 3 day. I think it was the max it showed, but now you get up to 5 days that you can see the weather, which is kind of nice. Below, we have all of our customer settings. Smart home controls is going to be your Z-Wave. Smart areas is for the partitioning, system info and usage. It's going to be where you can see history and things of that nature. And system settings is going to be where all the settings like adding user codes and things of that nature. So here real quick. So the default user code for the homeowner is going to be 1111. Touch system settings and get into the customer settings page. They'll see the users option where they can add and edit their users. One of the nice things about GC3 is that they're able to actually label the user. So instead of it saying user 4, you can say Michael or Carl or Steve or Cheryl, whatever the name is of the person who actually has that user code. The sound option that I mentioned, that you can now adjust individual sounds for different devices or different features. So now your chimes, button pushes, doorbell sounds, and voice enunciation alerts can all be controlled individually. You have your bypass sensors and the screen option. Bypass sensors, just simply to bypass sensor to turn it on and off. We have the screen option. This is where you can adjust your screensavers, screen timeout, things of that nature. We have date and time if you're not connected to a remote service provider. We have language options now. We now also support Spanish as well. It took us a little bit, but we got English, French, and Spanish on there for different options as well. And so that's some of the nice things. We also have a system test on there. This slide doesn't go down, I just realized that, and I apologize. But we also have the firmware update and the customers. Let's see if it'll let me show the pointer. All right, so you see that there's a little tool icon down to the left of language. That's also another access point to the installer's toolbox. You can adjust the Wi-Fi settings and also Z-Wave as well from here for the customer's sake. Let's talk a little bit about smart areas. Like we talked about that. Most people know that as partitioning, so we do have that support for it. In our smart areas, we're able to control different zones of the home. And this slide is having the text layover. But what's nice is you're allowed to have different areas armed and certain areas disarmed. And each user can be limited to certain areas of the home. So what's nice about that is that one user code may not have access to see the main house and only be able to arm and disarm their area, just to control the individual areas. We talked about smart home controls, which is your lights, locks, and thermostats. Pretty simple. It's just your standard Z-Wave. We also have garage doors under there and our scenes and rooms. So let's go ahead and jump into the sensors and talking about the different sensors we offer and what's available. So we have our different categories of sensors. We've got intrusion, our life safety, notification, which we've got some cool new ones there. Some of our other our 345, our Z-Wave, and some of our accessories. I'm just going to touch lightly on these just to get through them because there are a lot, but just talk about the key features of each. What we have is our thin door window contact. This does come in an E-series sensor, so it does come in encrypted as well. What's nice about this is our standard door contact. It also has the option for doing a hardwired lead as well to it. So you can actually use one door contact to cover two zones, basically. Normally work in areas where like you had bay windows and two windows side by side. We also have on GC2E that this supports normally open. So GC2E does support the normally open feature. We have our DW40, which is a bypass sensor. Be aware this is an end-of-life product and is also going to be phased out, but we do like to show it since it is still purchasable in some of our distributors. Basically, same as the thin door window contact, except it doesn't do the hardwired lead, and it has a button that you press on the front of it there to do a temporary bypass. So the system's armed, you gotta let the dog out in the middle of the night. You can press that button, open the door, and then when you close the door, it'll add the sensor back into the alarm system, or start paying attention to it, basically. We have our recess door contact as well, our DW20s. Nice because they're recessed in the door, so it's not visible. Makes it a little more discreet of a security system. It takes about a 3/4 inch or 7/8 or 11/16 bit to drill those out. So be aware, there's a pretty good size hole for some customers. So I wouldn't necessarily be putting this in a $10,000 door. Great to use. They're pretty strong, the magnets as well, which is nice. So all of our sensors, I'm showing you here, by the way, are going to be on the 345. The open air range we talked about is always 350 feet. So if you were in a field 50 feet apart from the panel of the sensor, these would work and talk to each other. In homes, because of walls and things like that, we tend to see that it drops down to 100 to 150. The most I've seen in a home going through about 4 walls was about 212 feet, I think we measured it out at. But, you know, it all just depends on the environment, the building materials and things of that nature. And most of our battery life should last 3 to 5 years. I actually have a couple of door contacts here in my house that I've brought with me every move. And they've lasted, I've got 2 that have lasted 6 years now, actually. And yes, they still work. I have tested them. So we do have a tilt sensor for garage doors. It is going to be coming out in an E-series as well eventually. Like I said, eventually all of our stuff is going to be E-series. This is nice. Just put on a roll-up garage door. It tells you when the door is open and closed. Straightforward. We also have a motion detector. Supports pet immunity up to 45 pounds, which is nice. It also can be used for doing some Z-Wave automation. We've had people do that where they say, hey, when I'm in the room, the Z-Wave motion or the motion detector sees me, tell my Z-Wave lights to turn on, which is kind of nice. Our glass break detector, we always like to tell people it's about 15, 20 feet open air line of sight as far as windows that it will cover. I used to have people say, hey, one will cover an entire house. That's not the case. Just want to point that out. So 15, 20 feet open air line of sight for those. Standard carbon monoxide detector. And we'll talk about some of the Z-Wave automation with the smokes. These here real quick in a moment. But with the smokes and carbon monoxide. The nice thing is we talked about the Z-Wave automation with those is that if you have a Z-Wave thermostat and our smoke detector goes off or our carbon monoxide, it'll shut off actually the HVAC system by default. So that's already built in with alarm.com. Really nice feature because one of the things people die from most of in fires is the smoke inhalation. So that's really nice. Our smoke, heat, freeze, the Smoke 3 does 3 features: smoke, heat, and freeze, which is nice. So it can detect all 3 of those features. The heat is a rate of rise, and the freeze is anything below 41 degrees. Now, one of the things is it is a photoelectric sensor, industry standard for fire alarms anymore. So the downside of those is if you've ever cut drywall, it creates a lot of dust, and that dust sometimes can trigger those photoelectric sensors. This is basically a beam of light that's being cut by enough dust particles in the air. So we actually have our Smoke 8 that's coming out. The Smoke 8's nice because it's able to detect burning of synthetic materials. So that way then when you're cooking that yummy breakfast with bacon and your 10 pounds of cheese and bacon, you're not going to set off the smoke detector if it's in a kitchen. So that's one of the nice features of that one. And then like we talked about, you can automate Z-Wave and the HVAC system that I talked about, which is super great and makes it a lot easier for homes to be a little more safer and smarter. Now we do have a lot of other options for fire. We have our Smoke Ring. This is designed to take over the existing hardwired smokes that are designed to be in the house. Any house that's been built after 1993 or has had a remodel where they had to have an inspection has been required to have hardwired smokes in almost outside every room and inside every bedroom. Nice is now you can take that whole system with one sensor and tie it into the ecosystem of the security system. So now then, instead of having to install smoke detectors everywhere, there's a system already in place to use. And this just goes under the base plate of the hardwired smokes. Now, some people don't care to mess with wires ever. They get touchy-feely about it. So we do have what's called the Firefighter, which is kind of nice. It just sits next to the smoke detector and listens for that sound to go off. It also works with the carbon monoxide detectors as well. Standard panic button that can be used. It can be worn as a belt clip, lanyard, bracelet. It also comes with a visor clip if you want to keep it in the car as well. Now, granted, these will only work if they're within range of the home, because we also have a fault detector. But one of the nice things about these is it's got a 5-second button press so that you don't get those false alarms. It is water resistant, so it can be worn in the shower. We do also have, like I said, the fall detector. Since Numera became a part of our company, we have this fall detector, and it's IPX7 water resistant, so it can detect falls, which is nice as well, because sometimes if you were to fall and hit your head, you're not able to push your panic button. We actually did a lot of testing with these. We played a whole game in the QA department, seeing who could get the other guy to trip more than the others, see who had the most falls at the end of the week. Wasn't the safest game, but it was hilarious to watch, and it was really cool to see how well the data in that fall detector and how well it actually worked. It didn't go off if like you were bending down to pick up your pen or things like that, but if you actually tripped and stumbled, it for sure went off. So we also have our grill guard, which is kind of a newer device of ours. If you ever have left the gas on your grill, this is a really cool device because now you're able to tell. So you don't end up blowing your eyebrows off. So it just slips on over. I do like to point out that this does not have a replaceable battery, but again, it still should have that 3 to 5 year battery life. And then it's, like I said, it's pretty simple and straightforward, able to detect when that knob is turned more than 20 degrees to indicate that it's turned on. Now, one of our newest sensors that everyone's really fallen in love with, especially in Texas, is the gun motion detector. What makes this a unique device is it's your standard trigger lock that meets the California gun safety certification. But what's nice about it is it also has an accelerometer built in for detecting motion. This is if somebody were to pick that up before they even try to unlock that trigger, it's already going to send you that alert to the panel saying, hey, someone's playing with the gun. In fact, we had one of the guys that's a trainer who doesn't have kids. I've got 2, so I'm used to being aware of child safety in a house. He doesn't have kids, but he's married, and his sister was over at his house with their nephew. And during one of his trainings, sure enough, he's got a gun guard or gun motion detector on all of his guns. And sure enough, since they're just sitting out on a shelf, because it's just him and his wife, he got an alert in the middle of a training, and it was his nephew had picked up one of the pistols. So he got that alert instantly, and the nice thing was he called his wife right away, and they were able to stop it before anything happened, or get to the kid before anything happened. So it was really nice. We do have our outdoor wireless contact. We have a gate in our backyard. My wife has loved this, being able to know that if someone opened the gate, so now I'm able to protect my home at my true perimeter where I have a fence. This is water and weather resistant as well. It can go down to -40 and up to 150 degrees. Painted, which is an awesome feature. It also has an open slot on the side to allow for the ability to mount it to like a fence as well, which is kind of nice. We do have a standard flood temp sensor. It has the 2 prongs. It does have to be submerged for 3 minutes, the prongs, to help prevent any false alarms and things of that nature. And it has the freeze and heat detection as well. But we do have the water leak detector. Now, this one's really unique. Water leak detector also first off, it triggers instantly. It's compatible with the Honeywell panels. What's nice about this one that I love is that it also has the drip detection on the top. So the first time a single drop of water drips from your water heater or the back of a toilet bowl from the tank or into your washer and dryer, you'll get that alert now. These are really great, easy to move around because they aren't hardwired or hard mounted to the wall at all, and easy to use. We also have a wireless doorbell. A lot of people use these more for triggers now to initiate panics or initiate Z-Wave rules, mainly because everyone already has cameras. But that is an available option. We do have secondary keypads that are more basic, our Pad 1. This is just a transmission only. It can transmit individual user codes. You can arm stay and away, and you can also trigger your police and fire alerts. It is battery operated, so we like to point that out. We have the key fob we talked about, same thing, arm stay away, can trigger an aux output or emergency key using the top 2 buttons simultaneously. We do have our repeater. If you've ever had any problems with range, we now offer a repeater. And this thing is amazing. We have done some serious testing with this, and we've done some non-official testing as well. Over in our Carlsbad facility, we put one of these at one end of our building, walked outside with the panel, or with the sensor, and the panel was sitting, I think, 50 feet to the other side of the repeater. And we ended up going, I think, like 450 feet away from the repeater, and we're still getting it to pick up. So it was really awesome. Now, granted, that was an ideal situation, I'm sure, but still, with as much noise as we have in our Carlsbad building, it was quite impressive. Our takeover module, this was actually 2GIG's first product we ever manufactured before we made our panel. Is the takeover modules for converting 8 hardwired zones to wireless. It can only do normally closed, and it can't do fire or life safety devices. So we like to point that out. But any motions, glass breaks, door contacts, completely covered. And we do have a take kit as well if the existing home doesn't have the existing CAN and power board. To use some of our devices that we talked about with GC2, you need what's called an XCVR2. That's going to cover some of our secondary devices, so your broadband bridge, if you're doing Wi-Fi. We have the alarm.com image sensor, basically a motion detector that takes a picture and sends it to the customer. And then also the TS1s or secondary keypads for GC2. Now, the thing to keep in mind is this is only going to, this is primarily for GC2. It is compatible with the GC2E, but the downside is if you go swap one of these transceivers into the GC2E, what ends up happening is while you get all those other devices, you'll lose the ability to do encrypted sensors. We do like to point that out, that if your customer wants those specific devices, you will lose the ability to do encrypted sensors on the E panel. So just be aware of that. So let's go through Z-Wave devices real quick. And then we'll show you some of our resources and do kind of a Q&A for a minute if you guys have any questions. I know we're reaching that time limit for you guys. I don't take too much of your time. We talked about Z-Wave. In fact, my slides are backwards. This one's supposed to come first. For those who aren't familiar, Z-Wave is a wireless communication protocol. I tell people it works the same way that Bluetooth does. If you're familiar with Bluetooth, then Z-Wave, as far as what it does, is no different. The only difference is what it's used for. For Z-Wave, it's used for home automation, lights, locks, thermostats. There's been Z-Wave blinds that I've seen as well, and things of that nature. And our Z-Wave garage door controller as well. The nice thing is that Z-Wave uses what's called a mesh network topology. So what happens is all your Z-Wave devices can talk to each other to help increase range and robustness of the network. So it helps prevent issues like this was out of range or things of that nature. So I'm going backwards, I apologize. So these are a couple of our Z-Wave devices we offer. We have hardwired light switches, which most do require an electrician to install. We don't recommend that if you're not an electrician to install them. but I've done them all in my home, just saying. And so far, my house hasn't burned down yet. And if so, I got the 2 gig smoke detectors and a Z-Wave thermostat to shut off the HVAC. So I'm covered there, just in case. We do have plug-in modules, though. Those are a little easier for low voltage techs to install, because it's just a plug-and-play device. It's also a dimmer as well. We have dimmer hardwired as well. We do also offer a basic Z-Wave thermostat. There are a couple other models out there that we are compatible with. We do offer a basic one. This does support emergency heat pumps, things of that nature as well. And then we talked about our Z-Wave garage door controller, which is really kind of neat because you're able to do it from your phone. And we are compatible with all the major manufacturers of Z-Wave locks. So we've got Kwikset, Schlage, Yale, and DynaLock, which is one of the newer ones. And DynaLock, I will say this, is one of the locks that does have that S2 encryption for Z-Wave. So let's talk about, just to show you the differences between Z-Wave and Z-Wave Plus and why they went to Z-Wave Plus. So Z-Wave, standard Z-Wave chip, which was in our GC2s, had a limited range. It was only about 25, 30 feet in a house, about 100 feet open air line of sight. And so naturally, with issues of walls and materials, it created problems. You still had the mesh network capability, though, which would help you talk to devices that would be out of range using only AC powered devices. So that's one thing we talk about, is that to use a Z-Wave repeater or any AC powered device is a Z-Wave repeater. It can work as a repeater. Repeat a signal 4 times, or 4 hops is what that's called. Now, when they came out with Z-Wave Plus, the Z-Wave Plus chip, it was a huge difference. We now have gone up to 50 to 70 feet or 175 feet open air line of sight. We've got better battery life, more bandwidth. We've got also more memory on the chip for more rules and scenes and commands to store. We've got 3 RF channels to help improve issues with interference and things like that, to help eliminate those problems that we've had in the past with Z-Wave. One of the nice things is also backwards compatible and forwards compatible. The other awesome feature is the self-healing network. So now the Z-Wave mesh network can fix itself if a device is lost and comes back online. So this is just showing an example of Z-Wave range and talking a little bit about hops to show you this, and I'll just go through these quickly here. So standard Z-Wave, was about 25, 30 feet. With that Z-Wave Plus, you're able to hit that 50 to 70 feet, which will cover most homes, most average homes. Now, the thing is that we talked about were those hops. And so what a hop would be is, let's say you have your panel right here. Here on the bottom left, you have a Z-Wave lock. Just using standard Z-Wave. So you're only limited to that 25, 30 foot range, and your device is out of range. So what you would do is you would just add in an AC powered device. So any of those plug-in modules will work as a repeater to extend the range, and therefore you can communicate to that lock. And that's what's called a hop. So a hop is just the communication when a device is out of range between 2 devices. So it's basically that repeater signal. And so that's what we call a hop. Now you can do a total, like we said, 4 hops. One thing, again, we always like to talk about is that only AC powered devices. So some people, this brings up a question a lot, see this thermostat and say, aren't most thermostats battery operated? And your answer would be correct, most are. But some thermostats are powered by the HVAC system. It'll usually be a C wire, your common wire, which allows that thermostat to be powered via the HVAC system. If that's the case, then the thermostat can work as a repeater. It's pretty much almost anything can except door locks, because they're strictly battery operated. So that's one of the things we always like to talk about. The other thing we always like to point out is signal loss. We talked a little about it. It's the 908 megahertz frequency. So what happens is you have to pay attention to the home when you're doing this house walkthrough and kind of designing the house as far as where you're going to place everything out. We always want you to pay attention to things like absorption, stone, brick walls. One of the ones that we see a lot in the South that I absolutely loathe, especially when I was an installer, were those chicken wire and plaster walls. Those basically worked like RF Faraday cages and would stop all of our signals. So we always like to tell people to pay attention to that stuff. Also jamming. So baby monitors and older cordless phones use that 908 megahertz frequency. So sometimes you'd see signal loss with those or interference. Most newer devices work on 2.5 or 5 gig or 2.4 or 5 gigahertz, so you won't see it as much. But any of the older cordless telephones where baby monitors still sometimes have that 900. The other thing we always talk about is sometimes some of the weirder things we've seen is mirrors or refrigerators. Large TVs has caused reflection of some of those D-Wave signals, or RF even as well. So we do tell people to just try and pay attention to what's around the house and where you're placing devices. And so that's one of the things we always like to talk about. And we do have an activity kind of do with everyone here. I just realized that I left this one in. I apologize, David. This is usually for the talking class, but we talk about, what are some things that can cause interference. We talk about in a room like that, you would have things like the baby monitor that could cause it, or the TV. You'd have a refrigerator, things of that nature. You also have in here a cordless phone that could cause problems. And so the solution to some of those, for those out of range devices or issues where you have interference, to fix those would be to add more AC powered devices. Those would be those lamp modules and light switches that you could add that would help increase that range and help communicate to those out of range devices or devices that were having problems talking because of interference. Now, ultimately, if you're having interference, eliminating the device sometimes is also the option. If it's an older device that I'm not really using, I've had that happen when people had baby monitors left in that they don't use. But we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Let me see what I've got left just to make sure, because I know we're cutting it close here. Just explaining what scenes and rules are, as well as just an overview of the smart areas. And then we can talk a little bit about designing a home if you want to, and do just our resources. Just because I know we need to wrap up here because your time's a little short for you guys. So a rule, just to make sure you guys understand what that is something that has to be initiated, or doesn't require anything to be initiated. So it'd be like a scheduled automation. Whereas a scene is something that is triggered by a person doing something, whether it's pushing a button or a door contact opening, and that initiates a scene. We do have rooms in the GC3 panel and GC3E. Identify where all your Z-Wave devices are by location, make it easier. And then we talked about the bookmark page already. Now just keep in mind with scenes, rules, and bookmarks, rules and scenes can be created on alarm.com, be the remote service provider, and scenes, rooms, and bookmarks are all done on the panel locally. So just be aware of those two different things. They do not sync. So if you create a scene on the panel and a scene on alarm.com, it's not going to sync those with what panels are programmed on each. So just be aware of that. So they do operate independently of that. So let's go ahead and jump into our upside that we're going to talk a little bit about. Pretty straightforward. Some of the upsides to going from GC2 to GC2E is the Z-Wave Plus with S2. You also get your encryption, which is a huge change for you guys. It's huge. That's giving those customers that peace of mind. And same with going to GC3 or GC3E. You get the encryption, you get your smart areas, you get the photo and screensaver, the bigger touch screen. You also get that partitioning, that smart areas that we talked about. And the nice thing is that that's able to be used for all sorts of different things. One we talked about was duplexes or things of that nature, but it doesn't have to be used. We've had people use it for vaults, for secondary apartments, duplexes, detached garage. Airbnbs are another big one that gets used, or business units where you want the warehouse to be armed, but the main office not. But some of the local areas we've seen has been like gun safes, like I said, home office, or a delivery system for your package delivery guy if you have an office. We've seen it for in-law rooms or pool areas. Some of the other business usages that we've seen have been offices, or a medicine cabinet is a big one, where you want to have the medicine cabinet armed, and then also restaurants and retail. So one of the other things that we talk about a lot of times is cross-selling sensors and peripherals. Just talking about the different packages we offer. We do have like 3-1-1 kits where it comes with a panel, a couple sensors, and a motion. Make sure that if you're using any of the E-Series sensors, that you are using it with an E-Series panel. And we do like to talk about that as well, and make sure that that's in there. So what we like to do now is just show you guys our resources and answer any questions that you guys have. So what we have is we do have our dealer portal. It's always great. We always recommend everyone sign up on this on our dealer portal. Excuse me, I was a little tongue twisted there. And the reason this being is that if a customer ever sees any of our products out there and is like, hey, I really like that 2 gig, do I get one? Instead of just Googling local security dealers, if they go to 2gig's website and look up the actual dealers in their area using the dealer locator. And this helps out because then that way, then if you're a registered dealer with us, it'll drive customers towards you. What's nice is you can also update. We have one of our newer features, our dealer update form, which allows you to keep your information up to date without having to call tech support or anybody. We also have our additional training, which is available. So we have certified tech programs. We do them in person as well. What we can do for your technicians, bring them up to speed. We come out, we do lunch, and we do a whole training, give them hands-on, things of that nature. But you can also watch a lot of our training videos online to sign up for additional webinars at learnnortechcontrol.com or learn2gig.com. So we have both those options available. We also now have finally a YouTube channel. Just make sure you look for the blue Nortech logo when looking for our videos. About this is for a long time, we've had plenty of other people made YouTube videos. So it was about time we finally got on board. And so now we have that available. And lastly, this is just our tech support number. We do have tech support open on Saturdays as well to give you guys support on a Saturday, and then just alarm.com's tech support information as well. But that concludes everything from me for today. Do you guys have any questions or comments that you'd like to go over? Or
Tim, maybe you can unmute, and maybe there is a question or two out there before we wrap it up. I know we went a little long, but I thought it was important to be able to finish the presentation. I thought it was a lot of good information. So if anybody does have any questions for Zach, now would be a good time to ask them. So the floor is open. Anybody?
Don't all jump at once.
I guess you gave them all the information they need. They absorbed it, and there was no question. So
a bit of a fire hose. You do kind of get blasted with all this. There was a lot to cover today, but
it was all good stuff. You guys got a rock solid product. You're always improving it, and this GC3 is quite the panel. So pretty impressive, and all the stuff it can do. And the new encryption is welcome for sure. That's a nice feature to have.
Yeah, it's definitely a big one. I'm excited to see how well it does out there for everybody. So yeah, we're really happy with it and happy with the way we've been going in the direction we're still going. We can't wait to surprise you guys with more stuff. So
excellent. So again, Zach, thanks so much for the presentation. Well done. David, pleasure to meet you, at least on the WebEx. I'll see you in New York shortly. And again, if anybody had any questions, that would be a good time. But if there still are no questions, we appreciate you taking part in our WebEx series as we continue to bring new and additional information to all you guys. We feel it's important and a useful tool for everyone to continue to learn. And we've got great products and a great team. And again, I want to thank you for taking part. So with that,
thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Okay, David. Thanks so much. Everybody have a great afternoon.
Thank you.